from the beginning. Okay. So here's the agenda if you want to get started.
Okay, great. All right, welcome everybody to the May 17th meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. We will go ahead and approve the minutes first before we open up our public hearing. Or should we do roll first, Mara?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do roll first. And here's the thing that we do need, one thing we do need to do, you don't have a secretary anymore. So at some point we need to figure out who we might have as a secretary. I've been taking the minutes and typing up the minutes, but I know at some point we do need a secretary. And usually that's who reads them out. So for this one, until we have that taken care of, I'm going to go ahead and read out. So we have Katie, you are here, and I see on Doug here. I see on Brendan.
Present.
Stephen.
Here.
Michael.
Yep.
Daisha.
Here.
And Dee Dee is our former vacancy. And then the only one I don't see yet is Jane, but we'll see if she comes on later. I also don't see yet our council liaison, Karen Alexander. So at this point, I'm going to mark her as absent for now. And then you are probably good to go to ask for a motion on the minutes.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to scroll through really quick? These are our minutes from the April 13th meeting. Once everybody has a chance to review, if nobody sees any revisions necessary or has any comments, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
Approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, Doug made a motion.
I second.
A second.
So was that Doug and Michael? Was that Doug who did the original and Michael
Doug
second?
and Brenda.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
So if you want to ask
All
for
those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, great, thank you.
So just as a thing, I'm just going to say Dee Dee can't vote on them yet because she wasn't at the last meeting. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 in favor and 1 abstaining.
Okay. And then Mara, do we want to do introduction? Is that what introductions mean?
Yes.
Go ahead and introduce ourselves.
Yes. So I know a lot of you, each month we've had a new member for the last 3 months. And then we had another new member prior to that. So if you all wanted to quickly introduce yourselves to our newest member, Dee Dee, and Dee Dee, if you want to just say hi to everyone and introduce yourself. And I know this is your first meeting.
Hi, I'm Dee Dee Dooley, and I am on this commission kind of by default, but I'm really interested to see what's going on. So thank you.
You want me to kick it off, Mara?
Yeah, why don't you kick it off and then I'll just call names out so it's orderly.
Okay. My name is Katie Ortworth. I'm the chair of the commission right now. I've been on the commission for, I don't know, like 5 or 6, 7, a long time. And I'm a real estate attorney by trade. I work for Caleres, a shoe company. but kind of have a hobby in historic real estate and preservation as well. I've lived in a couple historic homes now, and just love Webster Groves and love to be involved. So that's me. Welcome. We're really glad you're here.
Anne, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Ann Hallvox. My husband and I have lived in Webster for 11 years. We live in a century home, and I've just always been really interested in the area and the history about it, and very much passionate about preservation. And I've been on the commission, I guess, about 2 years now. Welcome. Thanks for joining.
So Doug next.
Hi, Doug Stanley. I've been on the board for probably 3 or 4 years, I guess. I'm in between. I think I'm the second oldest on the board, probably the oldest in age, but second oldest in experience. Live in a historic district and in a century home. So I'm very, very interested in what our commission does, and we're happy you're with us. Thanks for joining our commission.
Brendan.
My name is Brendan Barash. I've been on, this is my second term, so 1.5 years-ish. So relative to the rest of the veterans here, I'm still a newbie considering, but it's a fun group. So it's really interesting and nice to meet you, and welcome to the group.
Stephen, if you want to go next.
Okay, I'm Steve Stovall. I came in with Brendan, so we've got the same tenure on the board. I'm an architect. I've been in Webster for 3 years, I think. So I'm a newbie here all around.
Michael.
Hi there. I'm Michael Rose. I think I'm the one who started off this monthly ritual of new people 3 months ago. So I'm relatively new. And by relatively, I've been here for 3 months. I've been in Webster for 4 years now. Before that, though, I was just across the highway in Shrewsbury. We live in a century home, currently surrounded by century homes that seem to draw attention of certain people. So I became interested in what I could do to maybe help preserve the century homes around us instead of seeing them go a certain way. So yeah.
And Daisha.
Hi, I'm Daisha Stewart, and I am the newest on the commission of who's here tonight. And I have a background in art, and I am a teacher by trade. So, but we live in Old Webster, and I've always really enjoyed the architecture and the neighborhood of Webster Groves. And I'm also, like Michael said, I'm concerned about some of the houses that are being replaced with other houses. And so I just wanted to kind of come on the commission and see what's going on and see what I can do. So
The only other member we're missing is Jane, who was new last month. So hopefully she is okay. And Katie, you can go ahead with the rest of your agenda.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. All right, so the next item on our agenda is the public hearing. So we have a public hearing for the property at 130 West Swan. The petitioner is requesting a certificate of appropriateness. And let's see, Mark, do we want to go ahead and open them up, or do you want me to keep going on?
So go ahead with your standard introductory remarks, which is the second page of what I emailed. So we'll start with the introductory remarks. We usually just call the title, which you did do, and then do the basic remarks. I know the petitioners are the only ones on, but it's always important to make sure we document that we have given this opening as a public hearing.
I don't know if I did this first part. So the purpose of the public hearing is to determine if the accessory structure located at 130 West Swan should be issued a certificate of appropriateness to demolish the accessory structure detached garage. This commission recommends to the city council the adoption of ordinances designating single structures or sites, portions of structures, groups of structures, landscape elements, works of art, or integrated combinations thereof, having a special historical or architectural interest or value as landmarks or historic districts. The commission reviews applications for certificates of appropriateness to remove or demolish designated landmarks and structures within historic districts. In addition, this commission reviews applications for certificates of appropriateness before any of the following actions may be taken to a landmark property or to a property located in a historic district: subdivision, boundary adjustment, or lot split. In making this determination, the commission sits as an administrative body and by ordinance hears the applicant and any other evidence that may be pertinent. In order to accommodate the schedules of all the applicants, the commission requests all persons wishing to speak limit their comments to evidence regarding the historical significance of the proposal. Above all, please be concise and to the point. Comments voicing nothing more than general opposition to an application will not be tolerated. Applicants are granted 10 minutes, not included time used to respond to the questions of the commission. To ensure that all other persons who wish to present evidence are heard, the commission limits the comments of individuals to 3 minutes. Groups of 3 or more shall elect a spokesperson who shall be limited to 7 minutes. We request each of you adhere strictly to these time limits so that each applicant can be heard within a reasonable amount of time. And if you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker card, which not applicable here.
Not applicable right now.
So is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed demolition?
So I'm going to allow both the applicants to talk. So I'm going to add them both on as able to talk. And the way we've been doing this is they're able to talk, but we do not, we haven't been doing the visual.
Yes, hi. Can everyone hear me? This is Nicholas Uhl.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. I am one of the owners. My wife, Laura, I think is on the call as well.
Hi, Nick. Hi,
Yep.
Laura.
Hi, Guy. Hi, Katie. How are you?
Good. So for the record, I guess you already did, state your name, address, affiliation with the proposal, and we'll let you go ahead and discuss the proposal.
Sure. Laura, do you want me to do the
Yeah,
introduction?
Nick, I'll take a back seat.
Okay. Yeah, we bought a home here about 5 months ago at 130 West Swan. It's an old Victorian 1890. We're excited about renovating the home and building an addition onto the home, and also building a new garage as part of the larger overall project. The current garage is an amalgamation of various structures. There is the original, well, quote, original garage, probably from the 20s in the center, and then a newer structure with trusses built probably in the 70s or 80s, early 80s, something like that. And then another, like a lean-to shed in the back, and I don't know when that was built. The structure is in really bad shape, as you can probably see from the pictures. It's rotten. The roof is gone in the center of the structure, the original garage. There's a tarp over part of it now, but it's completely rotted. The foundation is broken. The concrete inside is bad as well. So we and our architect, Jim Belusky, determined that we could not save the structure. And so in its place, we have a beautiful, Jim did a great job, a beautiful new 2-car garage that we're going to be building with your approval, obviously. And we are excited about it. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Am I supposed to speak too? I don't know.
You definitely can if you have anything to add, and then we'll open it up to the commission.
Okay, I'm sorry. I mean, all I'll add is that we didn't want to tear it down if we didn't have to. We tried to talk to the architect about if there was any way to possibly save any part of it, because once it comes down, we have a new setback rule where we have to move it further from the property line and all this stuff. So we didn't want to tear it down. But as Nick went through, they just said there's no way to save it and make it work.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Now, does anyone on the commission, after hearing from Nick and Laura and reviewing the materials, does anybody have any questions for them before we discuss? No questions? Then is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed demolition?
There is no one else on the call in favor or against.
Okay, that answers my next question. Then we will close the public hearing. All beyond this point relative to the matter will be among the commission members only. We can't ask any more questions. So just to make sure nobody had anything else they wanted to ask. And we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And then we discuss, Mara, right before entering evidence or anything?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. So does anybody on the commission have any comments they'd like to make, or anything you noticed from the application?
I mean, I was gonna add, it's of an age that there potentially could have been something in there that could be reclaimed, but from the looks of it, it looked like everything was either already taken out of there or pretty much worthless. That's what I saw. I don't know if anybody saw something that I missed, but I was gonna ask that, but you know, I was kind of looking at the pictures on the side, and I'm like, this doesn't look really like there's anything left.
Yeah, and I think as the applicants mentioned, you know, obviously I think that center structure probably would have been the contributing piece to the, you know, the historical time period and significance of the property as a whole. But the fact that it was covered up on the front and covered up on the back with structures from different time periods, and make it just kind of looks like a ramshackle, you know, structure.
Yeah, I think it almost looks hazardous. So as much as, like they said, they wanted to try to save it, it also comes to a point of safety as well. So
Yeah, I don't think there's really bones in those things that you're like gonna get down to save. You're like, it's a concrete pad with some leftover wood put on it. I mean, it looked like he said the roof was gone. It almost looked like what was original was not there anymore. Like they had literally like redone all that and just to extend it a little bit on each side. So I think this one might be kind of an easy one.
Yeah. And just as in addition to the general comments, for the benefit of especially some of our newer members, we can kind of talk about how when we hear these requests, we usually kind of go back to the code and talk about, you know, what our purview is and what we have to compare this to. And Mara has some of that up on the screen right now if you want to look through. So, you know, some of the things that jump out that we talk about are whether the existing structure or accessory structure in this case could be put to any beneficial or economic use without demolishing it. You know, we've kind of said, you know, no, there's not much left to rehab, you know, rehabilitate or build upon. Whether they'll have a decrease in market value, incur substantial costs or decreases in tax returns, the cost of any relocation, demolition, addition, and structural soundness, which, you know, I think we can see from the pictures is pretty negligible. Not much there that's sound. What else? Economic feasibility of rehab. Let's see. Purchase as it relates to economic hardship, deterioration with willful neglect or routine maintenance. And living behind this property, I can attest to the fact that it was in this state of disrepair far before Nick and Laura bought the property. It's been sitting this way for a while. Is there anything else, Mara, that we've got in the slideshow?
No, I would say all I ended with is the list of evidence, because we will have to, once you get to a certain determination, you will have to enter the evidence into the record.
So are there any commission members that have any concerns about granting this certificate of appropriateness? Ask it that way first. If there are no concerns, does somebody want to make a motion to grant the certificate of appropriateness?
I'll
I'll
move.
motion to grant that.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Michael. All those in favor of granting the certificate of appropriateness for demolition?
Aye.
Aye. I think we're unanimous.
Do you want to just confirm and ask for any opposed?
Are there any opposed?
Thanks.
Okay, so the certificate of appropriateness is granted. And thank you, Nick and Laura. I think that's all we need, right, Mara?
That's all we need for this evening.
All right, thank you both very much for presenting. All right, and now we will enter the evidence.
Yes, we probably should have entered the evidence before. Yeah, but that's okay. What we've usually been doing is that the evidence is on the screen. And so we have just integrated it into, you don't have to read through all the items.
Right.
We normally would have read through the items because it's not in the meeting in such the same way. But now we've been doing it a little bit differently lately. So with it up on the screen, because the way that it's recorded in the PowerPoint, that is enough to put it into the record.
Okay. Do I need to make a motion to enter the evidence, or it's good as, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And I apologize. We created slides for the next couple items, but I realized the title all the way up at the top is wrong on this one. So, but we can move on to the next item on your agenda.
Okay. Hit the back button here. Okay. So we have 2 items of new business, 2 demolition recommendations, one at 220 Clara and one at 603 Sunnyside.
So typically what we do is staff lets you know. You should have in your packet and with a link, a staff report in regards to determining if there are any elements that you should be aware of on either of these for demolition. They're not in historic districts. They're not designated historic, but they are over 50 years old. And then as you look through the items, we always try to confirm whether there was any reason that we should be aware to recommend not to demolish. And in this case, I apologize. I left the words accessory structure because I was doing them both at the same time. The first one, 220 Clara, is the demolition of a primary house structure. And we usually read through these items. I apologize. I'm going to try to move some things around in here on my PowerPoint so I can see. I'm also looking at everybody's faces. So this is an existing single family dwelling. It was built in 1920. We found nothing pertaining to it being historic in any documentation for a historic inventory sheet. It's not been previously identified as an at-risk property. It's a 1-story bungalow, approximately 1,122 square feet. The applicant did provide some existing conditions report from an engineering company identifying some foundation damage. According to public records, the applicant bought it in January of this year for $127,000. They intend to demolish the existing structure, and they do plan to build a single-family dwelling. Any questions for staff? There's no thoughts or questions. Staff recommended approval, but we do need a vote.
I'm just curious, did they do any sort of like economic feasibility of rehabbing or just?
No, for these, they're not required to do the economic feasibility because it's not a specific item. If it's not in a historic district and it's less than the, if it's more than 50 years old, it is required to go through this process, but they're not required to do an economic feasibility.
Okay. Is there anybody that disagrees with staff's recommendation? Has any comments that we want to discuss? If not, I'll take a motion to approve staff's recommendation.
Move we approve staff's recommendation.
Doug, do I have a second?
I'll second.
None. All those in favor of approving staff's recommendation for the demolition recommendation at 220 Clara? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.
So the second one we have on is a accessory structure. Again, staff does the basic report. Accessory structure was built in 1920. We don't have any records that this is particularly historic. It wasn't identified as an at-risk property because we focus on the primary structure usually versus the accessory. It's 234 square feet. They submitted an inspection report identifying some basic deficiencies in the structure, and then it can no longer function as a garage, or it was changed to no longer function as a garage. They purchased the property last September. They're the owner occupant of the dwelling, and they do plan to demolish it to build a new structure within the rear yard. Due to not having any particular historic items related to it or any history to it, staff was recommending to approve the demolition.
Anyone disagree with the recommendation and have any comments they'd like to discuss?
Mara, just again, is staff able to recommend to the owners of like rehabbing any of the original windows or doors on the structure? Is that something that can just be addressed with them, or?
We can. I will tell you, it looks like from what we understand, those doors are totally not original to it. And I think there's only, I think that one small window and maybe the side door, but we're pretty sure those might not be original either. But yes, we can definitely, in every case, always recommend.
I think this one, the inside of it, the wood that's in there, I mean, it's nothing old. It's all a bunch of 2x4s and plywood, but I think the recommendation in general should be to provide that to the refab or whatever. I mean, the fact that a 2x4 is $50 right now, or whatever it is, ridiculously, that's thousands of dollars worth of wood in there that somebody the organizations can use. So I know we can't tell them to do that, but I think that should be a strong recommendation.
I would agree.
I don't see any reason. It's not, there's no historic, it's more just the right thing to do, the moral decision.
We can put that in the letter, definitely.
I would not be surprised if that's not part of the new garage that's stored in the old garage.
That's true.
If there are no other comments and nobody is in opposition, can I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
I motion to approve
I
it.
approve.
Thanks, Brendan. Was that a second by Dee Dee?
Yes, it was.
Thanks. All those in favor, please say aye.
I
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
So thanks everyone for getting through all of those. Now we're going to try to be efficient with our time. For those that might have noticed, our city attorney has joined us. What we were going to do, knowing that we might have taken as much as we did, about 30 minutes to get us through the historic hearing and the 2 demolition requests, is we were going to focus first on our city attorney talking a little bit about sunshine law, conflict of interest, maybe anything about meeting protocol. I threw some language on there. And we could try to get those questions answered first. That way he can leave us as needed. And then I have a few more slides to kind of go through a little bit more about training. And then depending on how we look in terms of time for this evening, we can always pull some of this over to next month if needed. I had hoped that we weren't going to have any demolition requests or anything on, and they all kind of came in at the last minute, which doesn't give us as much time, especially, as everyone's evening time can get precious. So for those that don't know, Neil, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Neil Brentrager. I'm the city attorney, pardon me, and have been in this position for now almost 2.5 years. I brought with me a little bit of controversy, which I think I've left behind me. But again, I've truly enjoyed it. Most of all, I've enjoyed working with Mara, who, as you all know, is very thorough and very complete in the things that she does. It makes my job very easy. So there are 3 things that she has asked me to talk about. I'm going to give you a 30,000-foot view of these things. Hopefully they'll be useful to you. But more importantly, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Or if going out of this meeting, things come up, questions come up, you should certainly feel free to contact me by email or by phone and ask me any questions that you might have. Hopefully I can answer them for you, and you can go on your way. We try and make it as easy as we can for you as commission members, because you are volunteers. You are giving your time and your energy and your talents to something that's very, very important. And forgive me if I keep clearing my throat, but my allergies have gone crazy over the last few weeks. So again, it is very important to make sure that your time is well used, and anything that we can do to make that easier, I'm happy to do. So keep that in mind, and my contact information is available to you anytime that you have a question. So having said that, let's jump right in. So the Sunshine Law is something I want to talk about first and foremost. It's generally misunderstood. And I will tell you that sunshine in its concept is designed to make sure that government is transparent. And what it's talking about when it talks about that transparency is that you as a commission will generate certain records. There are things that you will generate in the normal course of business. The public has a right to see those things. And so what we've done is set up a recognizable, predictable, and understandable path most of the time to getting those records if people want to see what's been done. The things that we have to produce for Sunshine are records that you would generate at your meetings, records that you generate before the meetings that are related to your meetings, like your agenda, your minutes, which you generate at the meeting itself, and then any documents that would be records that are introduced at the meetings themselves. That is the core of the Sunshine Law. And again, if you start with this idea that we want everything to be transparent, the background and the place, I guess, that people have the most issue is that when you have communications with each other outside the context of your meetings. You may or may not be engaging in conduct that is supposed to be memorialized in some way, shape, or form. And so we tell people, look, it is natural as a member of a commission to call another commission member and say, hey, look, I have a thought about this particular matter that's going to come before us at the next meeting. Can you have conversations like that? You can. What if two of you or three of you, I'm sorry, decide to get together and have conversations about what's going to happen at the next meeting? And again, and just generally asking questions and not actually saying, hey, how are you going to vote? That sort of thing. But hey, I want to talk to you about those things. Can you do that? Yes, you can. What happens when four of you get together and now you want to have a conversation? Now you're getting into dangerous territory because you're getting close to a quorum. Your quorum is let's say you have 9 voting members. So your quorum is going to be 5, right? And so anytime you have a group of 5 or more, you are actually meeting as a commission. And you are actually in a situation where you should probably A, post that, and B, create minutes, okay? Why do we do this again? Are we trying to create work? No, but what we are trying to do is make sure that the things that you do when you engage in the business of the city are actually memorialized and records are kept of that. So again, it really only becomes an issue when you are, when more than 4 of you are meeting to talk about various issues. Now that's not been an issue during this time of the pandemic. No one's gotten together to talk about anything, right? But you could also get into that problem if you're sending out emails. So let's say that Katie were to send an email to Brendan, who sent it to Ann, who sent it to Dee Dee, who sent it to Stephen, again, and saying, hey, what's your thought about these things? Are you actually having a meeting? Probably not, but there are people who argue that you might be in violation of sunshine. So the simple rule is your business that you do as a commission should be done in your meetings. Conversations that you have are all good. You can do all those conversations, but again, be very careful not to get into a situation where you're creating or generating conversations that are getting passed around and that might look like business if someone were a casual observer, okay? So again, it seems a little silly to start to think about that sort of thing, but again, if you work with the idea that this is supposed to be transparent, that everything that we do as a commission is supposed to be something that people can see, as long as it's not something that's done in a closed session, then you'll understand why we assert those rules, okay? Does anyone have any general questions about sunshine? And I will tell you something real quickly. If you are concerned about sunshine, if you go to the Attorney General's website, there is a booklet that you can either print out online or you can order from the Attorney General's office that is probably 40 pages long that gives you a summary of the sunshine law. It gives you an FAQ on questions that you will most likely encounter if you're on a board or a commission. And it gives you a lot of the rules to work by. It really is just common sense, okay? But there is a publication that you can access there. I look at the sunshine law literally every day, okay? So it's chapter 610 of the revised code of the state of Missouri if you have any questions. But I would, again, encourage you, if you really do, to look at the Attorney General's site or call me, okay? Questions generally about sunshine?
Yeah, I have a question that I think is common for all of us is what's the thought or ruling on social media?
So social media is really not as much a sunshine question usually as it is a meeting protocol or conflict of interest question. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that, Brendan. So again, if I'm going on social media and I say I'm Brendan and I'm on the HPC and we've got some interesting things tonight and I'd like everybody to be there. Is that a public record? I don't think it is, okay? So do I think you have to send that on to Katie Nakazano and retain that as a public record? I don't think you do, okay? Now, if you are on social media, if I'm on Facebook or if I'm on Twitter, and I've gotten responses from a number of commission members, now you're again starting to get into that situation where more than 4 of you are getting together and you might be in a situation where arguably you could be engaging in city business. The real issue, in my opinion, in social media is not that daisy chain, as we call it. The real issue is being very careful not to voice your opinion on matters that are before you before they are properly before you. So what I mean by that is that you are asked as a commission to make certain decisions. People come before you, and it's sort of in the nature of litigation, right? I'm coming to you and I'm asking you to make a decision about various things that your board has jurisdiction over. If you have already decided these questions, if you have gone out on social media and you have voiced an opinion that is inconsistent with the position that someone who is coming before you is taking, they may be able to say, you know what, Brendan, I don't think that you're fair on this. I don't think that you've got an open mind. So again, when you do go into social media and you are offering opinions about things that come before you, that's more of a question of your ability to serve on a particular question and whether or not you should be disqualified from the matter that's before you. So it's not really a sunshine question, it's really a meeting protocol question. Because if you've pre-decided it, then you shouldn't be deciding it. You shouldn't be asked to, or you shouldn't be part of a decision that would be coming after you've had a full and complete hearing on the issue. You're asked to keep an open mind. And again, if you can't, and we understand that, then you simply would recuse yourself from the vote itself, saying, hey, I've looked at this, I've made up my mind. I'm not going to be fair and impartial in this thing. Again, it's not the curse of Cain. Again, it's you being honest. And frankly, people will appreciate that as you go forward. So it's a little bit of a distinction that I'm drawing there, Brendan. Did I make that clear?
Yes, yeah, that was very clear. I think I kind of led into one other question though, was something we deal with on a monthly basis are these demolitions, and just as you're talking through that kind of secondary issue, not necessarily the sunshine law, but the not being able to be impartial or going into the meeting with an open and fair judgment, is a lot of times we get this information prior to the meeting, and it gets posted on Facebook sometimes. And I think for myself to come into this meeting and not be reviewing the data or the submission as we're talking about it, I look at it when it gets sent to me by an email, and I do kind of come into this with some thought. And I think it's human nature that if somebody posts, hey, there's this demolition up, people will say, yeah, based off the information, this is where I'm leaning. You think in your professional opinion or legal opinion, it's just safest bet is for all of us on here, whether we have reviewed the information, if we've reviewed the information and we are going into it with data behind that decision, do not voice that until we're in our meeting.
Right. So really the answer is, of course, keep an open mind and make a decision based on all the information that's presented to you. But if, let's say you get an email before the meeting, your neighbor hears that this is up there and says, hey, Brendan, here's what I want you to think about. You can respond to that email, but I would tell you to respond by saying, thank you for the information. Don't write back and say, boy, I agree 100%, blah, blah, blah. Thank you for the information. Okay. Now you can choose then to either introduce that email or not, or to include it in the record or not. I would tell you not to, unless you think it's something that should be included, again, because you think it's something that would promote the edification of the rest of your commission. But again, those sorts of emails that are sent to you personally, I would acknowledge them by saying thank you, but I wouldn't say anything more. And you're not violating your oath. You're not violating your duties as a commission member by doing that. Okay. And you're going to get emails. People are going to, send things to you and say, hey, this is what I want you to think. That's human nature. And candidly, as you said, you're always going to have certain preconceived ideas about what's happening. But again, listen to what's being said at the end of everything, having weighed everything. Here's what I think, and make your vote. That's all we're asking you to do. Okay.
Understood. Thank you very much for all that information.
Great. So let's talk about conflicts of interest for just a moment. We do in our code have a provision regarding conflicts of interest, and it's very simple, and it applies to everybody who serves on every commission or elected office or works for the city of Webster Groves. And this is common literally in every governmental entity. And basically what they're looking for here are people who have financial interests that could create a conflict. Again, that's simple. If you were to have a financial interest in something, or if you found a property that you had was coming before the commission, it's a no-brainer. You know that you can't vote on that. And that's all our conflicts rules do. They do do also engage and incorporate the state statutes regarding the Missouri ethics rules and what is a conflict of interest. And here's the interesting question. And again, those about whether or not you have a financial investment or financial interest in the outcome, that's a simple thing. But we often hear people who will say, when they're on a commission like your own, you know what, this is my neighbor. I think I have a conflict. I don't want to vote. What you're really saying there is not that you have a conflict of interest. We understand it in our, what you really have is a situation where it is personally difficult for you to make that vote because you're personally engaged with it, okay? So again, because they're a friend or what have you. What you do in a situation, simply recuse yourself. Now, again, you all know because you get your agenda and you get your packets in advance, you all know if you're going to have a neighbor that's or a friend, a business associate, whatever it might be, who's going to be coming before you as a commission, and it's possible for you to serve during that particular hearing piece. Simply make sure that you, in advance of the meeting, have said, "Hey, I'm going to recuse myself." And the reason you're going to do that is because the code itself said in Chapter 2 that you have to have 5 yes votes for anything to pass. So it's not just a simple majority. So if you're going to recuse or abstain yourself or abstain from a particular vote, you might find yourself in a situation where you won't have enough votes to do business on that particular issue. And so, again, you have alternates who can serve in your place. Just simply let make sure the alternate is there to serve on your behalf. And, again, if it's your next door neighbor, you don't want to have to vote on that because, again, particularly if not something you would necessarily be in, you're going to create serious political problems at home for that to happen. So again, just simply recuse yourself or abstain. Try and do that in advance if you're in advance so that can be planned for to make sure that you have enough people in order to do the business necessary by the commission. Any questions about that? Again, the conflicts of interest rule are really pretty simple. And again, if you have a financial interest in it, if you have personal investment in the outcome, whether it's financial or just you simply stand down and you don't vote on that particular object. We address that in 1,000 different ways, okay? So meeting protocols. Again, you have a chair, Robert's rules will apply if you can't get along otherwise, okay? So I tell people, don't be overly formal, although it's certainly to make it clear when motions are made and they're seconded and you understand where communications need to occur. But again, you guys can figure it out as you go along. In terms of what you need to do. I think Mara is probably as good a parliamentarian as anyone, understands where these rules are and how they apply. But the meeting protocols, again, are just designed to make sure there's order. In something like the HPC, this is probably not a huge issue, although I know you guys certainly have your fair share of controversial matters before you. But again, it's simply a matter of making sure that you are doing business in an orderly fashion. I don't get too caught up in it. Even at council or, again, at the various commissions that I have to attend, we really don't have a big problem with it. But again, we understand who the chair is and kind of up to the chair to maintain, not kind of, it is up to the chair to maintain order and make sure that the rules, and you're only doing this so that you can get through your business. It goes back to what I'd said before. You guys are volunteers. You need to do your business, but you should do it in the most efficient way possible. Part of the reason we set up these protocols is to make sure that your business is efficient. Okay. Any questions at all that anyone that anyone might have that you can think to yourself, gee, I'd like to ask the Sitch of that. Okay, I'm going to take it by your silence. The answer is no. Mara, what would you like me to address that I haven't addressed?
I think that's all of it. Just a clarification, they don't have alternates anymore, so I don't have the ability to have alternates. So just making sure if someone does feel that they need to recuse themselves for a particular matter, to let me know ahead of time so I can make sure you have a quorum and that we can vote. And then just another reminder with social media, and I say this to like Plan Commission, don't be discussing items that haven't come before you yet. In answering, if you're going to answer someone in social media, or please simply say, why don't you talk to city staff? That's usually the best and easiest way, is to direct them to us. Because we have the ability to answer questions and talk about packets, or tell them when a meeting's occurring and other things like that. I think people want to share information, and it's a little hard to separate when they're sharing information and then when they're starting to insert their opinion into the information they've shared.
Let me address that for just one moment, because I want to make sure that in response to Brendan's question, that's what I was saying. So if you do get on social media, an inquiry that says, hey, you've got something in front of you, or someone, they're not even addressing it necessarily to you, but you're seeing it. Position that there's no purpose. Now, it's a little different question if it's come before you and it's already been voted upon. Even then, though, I will tell you that if you've paid attention to our various social media platforms, like various connects, those places can be terrible. And the disinformation and misinformation that is out there, misinformation meaning disinformation, meaning people who are purposefully putting out bad information, can truly be discouraging. And I'm sure you've all seen it. But after the fact, I don't have as big an issue, although I don't see that there's a lot of value or merit to the conversation itself, other than after the fact. If you need more information, you can get this information by contacting staff, or you can look at our minute meeting and see what was done and why it was done. Again, but I don't know that I would engage much beyond that. Again, only because it's so discouraging to read this. But certainly before, you shouldn't have any communication. After the fact, it's a little different story, because you've already ruled upon it. It's already off your desk, and it's memorialized, okay? But again, you're going to find yourself going down rabbit holes and having conversations with people that will cause you to lose patience if you do it. Any other questions?
Oh, go ahead, Doug.
I was just going to make a comment of a situation we had about 2 or 3 years ago, where there was a demolition request in a historic district of a house that was controversial in the proceedings we had, and a number of us knew the people that were involved, and there were character people who are attesting to the character, and that everything would be built, in proper, historic fashion and stuff. And I know that that I got a little uncomfortable with what I was going to say outside of the meeting, because I knew these people, and so we had a conversation at the end of our meeting, which is a public meeting that everyone was available to go to, about not talking about the case outside of, or the matter outside of out of the public, and that really helped me. I was like, I had a directive not to do it, so I didn't need to, worry about it. I could just simply say, I can't talk about that. I'm on the commission, and I just can't talk about it. And it gives you an out. And we just haven't had anything controversial in a while. So
you will. And again, I think that that's a good policy. You'll know when those things are before you. And again, I think it's just a better approach to say, look, we've put everything in front of the public in these public meetings. There are exhibits that get attached, recommendations. You've had an open discussion about your vote, how you're going to do it. The vote is open. It's a matter of public record. I think you've said everything that you need to say. And again, Doug, I couldn't agree with you more. It's the better approach, just because you're going to think that people, you hope that people will be logical and people will be considerate, but so often they're not. And so I think just a general approach that says, look, we've done what we need to do. We put it on the record. It's all there and available. Anybody can see it. That does the trick. And I would encourage you to do that. If you've gotten something controversial, is just say, look, here's the safer path. And again, you're not following anybody, you've done everything publicly.
If everyone's good, we'll go ahead and move on, and Neil wouldn't have to necessarily stay and get through the rest of all of this, but he can stay if he's really bored.
Neil's youngest daughter finished her last exam in law school, her second year of law school, and she's coming over to open a bottle of champagne. So Neil is going to have champagne with his daughter.
Congratulations.
Thank
Thank
you.
Neil.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I wanted to move on to the code itself to try to talk to us a little bit more about, with so many new members, and even with some of the members that aren't so new, we never really had a big discussion in regards to, you know, what is your role? What are you supposed to be doing? What are the kinds of things that you can be working on? The one thing that's fabulous about the ordinance for historic preservation is it's probably, for all the commissions, one of the most extensive ordinances. The only one that's even close to as extensive is probably Architecture Review Board. Most others are very simple. They simply say this is how many people should serve, and there's usually a couple sentences about what you're supposed to do. But yours is an entire chapter. So it is chapter 52. And what I was going to do is kind of walk you through some of the key things in regards to the chapter. Please interrupt at any point if you have some questions or some thoughts. But you do have a very extensive purpose for the historic preservation. And I'm not going to read all of these one by one, but just a thought that this identifies a number of different things in your purpose. It identifies ways to identify structures. It finds a way to foster pride in the structures. Helping to conserve and improve them are obviously still in there, thinking about economic benefits. But overall, it's an idea that you can promote, you can identify, you can evaluate, you can protect. All of those words are very active words about the things that you can do. And there are a number of means that you can do it through. And in the last couple of years, our focus has been a little bit more on the protection and maybe not as much on the education or the civic pride or even the identification. So I just wanted to sort of remind you that there's a lot to these various chapters. And I will make sure that we send the entire chapter 52 to everyone so you can see it in more depth. Just a quick reminder about your membership. This is actually something we changed pretty recently. It used to be that there were only 7 members and there were 2 alternates. And then there was a whole thing about if you served as an alternate, did you technically already serve enough terms that you couldn't get appointed ever again? And sometimes that's pretty difficult when you have pretty active members. So we did make sure that there were, instead of having alternates, there were just a general 9 appointed members. There are also 3 that are non-voting members, myself as one of them, the city manager is one, and a council member selected by the city council. So Karen Alexander is yours currently. In the past, you've had Laura Arnold, and prior to that, there have been other members that have served. Talks a little bit about the voting. In the section, it also talks a lot about having someone who is a chair and a vice chair. You currently do have a chair and a vice chair. There's usually a secretary also to help to read the agenda items and to take minutes. I've been kind of acting in that role since our other Anne left the commission, but at some point we probably need to bring that back. I usually wait till the day that the agenda is going out and realize that I haven't done the minutes yet, and I'm trying to frantically get them together. So those are a couple things about the membership and how everyone serves. Going into powers and duties. This is a little bit different than your purpose. There is a very, very long series of powers and duties that you can take care of. And I'm going to go through the list, but then I was going to focus on some of the most important ones that you've been focusing on in the last couple of years that many of the newer members might not be aware of. So just as a reminder, again, I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can conduct surveys for identifying historically significant or architecturally significant properties, structures, sites, and areas. You can investigate and recommend ordinances that will help having special landmarks. You can adopt ordinances, recommend ordinances for the city council to adopt for new historic districts. You're supposed to keep a register of significant properties. You're supposed to confer recognition upon particular properties with plaques or markers. You're supposed to advise and assist owners of these properties on some things that they could do in terms of the financial aspects of preservation. Help nominate landmarks or districts to the register for Webster Groves, and then eventually, hopefully, to the National Register. Education. This is really important. It's something we actually really haven't done in the last year or so, just because we've been focusing on some other important aspects, but we haven't done education like newsletters, brochures, pamphlets, programs. Holding public hearings. You did one this evening on demolition of something within a historic district. Holding public hearings if you're going to nominate a new landmark or historic district. Requesting the building commissioner to issue stop work orders. So if there's something important that you realize or identify that it should not have moved forward, making sure that we are made aware in case we need to do a stop work order. This next one is one that we recently amended. It's to review all applications for demolition permits for anything 50 years of age or older. It used to be 100 years or older. And we started realizing we were losing things that were 97, 98, 99 years old because the developers knew to look for that number to understand which homes they did not have to bring before us. And it was important for us to identify some of the mid-century modern architecture that might be out there, or things that might be, not as old as 100 years old. I know that's a great century mark to reflect upon, but we thought that it was important. So that's a recent change. To call upon available city staff members as well as experts for technical advice at any time. You can ask any of our staff here to help you with items, whether it's the building commissioner or the inspectors. Upon approval of the council, retain additional specialists to help with advisory committees. Potentially be able to testify before boards or commissions. So if there's something that is important that's of a historic nature, helping to testify before, say, the Plan Commission or the Architecture Review Board or the Board of Adjustment, if it's going to somehow affect something that's historically or culturally or architecturally significant. Making recommendations on budgetary appropriations for any of the purposes within this chapter. And then it gives you a big general, any other action or activity necessary to help implement your powers and duties. So there's a big general catch-all at the end. I wanted to go through a few of the things that I think have tied back in the last few years that are quite important, that are items that have been undergone, some of them with additional help from other organizations. So the historic walks, that was a joint effort that was started by the Historical Society and has been continued to be furthered with additional walks. This map happens to identify a few of the original walks. I know it's missing the most recent North Webster walk, but our city map has these identified, and I know that the Historical Society is actually working on, as we talked about this a few months ago, they have a volunteer who is digitizing and creating some online versions of the walks that have audio to go along with it. And we talked about integrating some of our online maps that would let you click on different elements and listen to the audio when you are walking and seeing the walk on a map. So those are sort of some of the things that are part of the education portion. We talked about maybe the possibility of whether there might need to be some additional walks or maybe drives, because some of these are more spread out across the community, like the Sears homes or the Lustron homes. In addition, there have been a number of other projects, including historic district street signs. There was a lecture series for the last few years that were specific lectures open to the public. Historic walk medallions. The most recent two projects that a few of the members that are on now were helping with, There is a tree in the Webster Groves Library. It's a large wooden tree that has little brass plaques, and each of those plaques are identification for historic districts and historic structures. And we have the ability to, as we identify new ones, that we can add them to that tree. There's also the Douglas School marker that was installed up on the property where Douglas Manor is now. So those are a few of the key projects that have been done in the past that tie into what your role includes. Another thing that's pretty important, which identifies back into the surveys and research. Your code goes into some very specific information in regards to looking at identifying potential landmarks, identifying potential historic districts, looking at ways to look at a particular historical period or event, looking at particular landmarks in regards to architectural style, certain architects or engineers or builders, and then looking at, it even has archaeological resources and possibly understanding something older if it is something that might identify with our community. And then all this criteria, these surveys and research can help be adopted to help survey or nominate potential landmarks in historic districts. And I know we've been talking a lot about our at-risk properties list. I think this kind of falls into the surveys and research identification, because there are ways that you can identify potential landmarks through looking at properties that are above a certain age. I know we have our walk information to help identify additional other properties that could potentially create new historic districts. So those are pretty important to identify. Nomination of landmarks in historic districts. There's only been, I think, 2 since I've been here that have been identified and nominated. One was a single house and one was a smaller district. But on this map that you see here, items in blue are just sort of individual pieces of property that have been identified. And then the pink are the overlapping historic districts. It just so happens that we have our GIS map that right now has it just all the historic districts essentially in one color. But there are other maps that identify on the city's website the individual various historic districts. But those are things that we can think about. There's been some conversation about whether there's an area further north that might be able to be designated with historic district. There's also been some conversations about, again, maybe a walk with Lustron homes or something that is a particular grouping of an architect or a style that might create another sort of walk or historic district. Certificate of appropriateness. One of the items that we did tonight was a certificate of appropriateness. Just a reminder that the way the certificate of appropriateness works is we first identify that it's already in an existing historic district, and we identify whether that or that it's a landmark property. Then we identify, are they going to demolish any part of that structure or building? Are they going to relocate? We've had a couple where they've lifted it up and turned it on its side, or lifted it up and removed it completely and moved it somewhere else. If they're going to subdivide any piece of property, this was put in place from my understanding because someone was going to subdivide a larger piece of property around a historic structure. And by subdividing the land off of it, it changed the character of what that historic structure had meant in terms of the overall lot. So identifying if that subdivision is going to make some marked changes in the character of the setting or the layout of where that particular property is located. Lot splits of any property, which come back to subdivision, and boundary adjustments, which also kind of come back through with subdivisions and lot splits. So those all come before you. They have a very specific in the code series of steps that need to be taken. You probably all sort of listened as Katie was able to go through our script that identified holding a hearing. trying to get the applicant to speak, we put signs on the property. So for example, for the one this evening, there was a sign that went on the property that identified that there was a public hearing for the certificate of appropriateness. It did identify that it was for the accessory structure, and gave a phone number and an email to call if there were any questions. And we would have passed on any information we'd heard ahead of time. That's kind of where I am in just going through the basics of what we are supposed to cover, things that you're supposed to do. I did not get into much more detail or information about the 50-year or older, but it is something that we changed pretty recently. And I wanted to kind of leave the rest of the time up for starting to ask some questions or to see if there are some other things that we want to talk about in regards to how you all operate. Thoughts or questions? I know I wasn't that thorough.
I have a question. I mean, I know we've kind of talked about this a couple times and you covered a few things here, but there's a lot. And I think, you know, given your, you know, history with this and your understanding of it, what would be, because we do have a lot of new people. I mean, I consider myself new. What would be your, like, if you had to pick two or three things to be proactive about for us as members, like other than the obvious of, you know, keep an eye on the neighborhood and look out for things that you seem are at risk, you know, that's an obvious big one, but what are other things just for us to do and keep in the back of our mind while we're taking walks and, you know, hanging out in the neighborhood? Like, what are things to be proactive? How can we help and be proactive, I guess, is the short answer to that long question.
So I think it comes down to, what are you interested in? It is such a broad grouping of things, but I think past commissions have at the beginning of the year identified a few things that are important to them and they're interested in. Because if you're not interested in making a code amendment, we're never going to get anywhere. We're just going to go around, you know, there's going to be no questions. No one's going to be concerned. In the past, I think the focus has been that a couple people have said, hey, here's the 5 projects we're all interested in. And then they narrowed it down to, what can we take on this year? So for example, when they were doing the historic walk for North Webster, that was a focus that they all decided they wanted to get some money pulled together, see what could be matched from the city council, get it in for the budget item, figure out, you know, who they could hire to make sure the history was done correctly, try to match the language and the wording that was done in previous walks. And then that was their purpose. Later, when they were doing the tree, you know, there were a couple focused members who that was a very strong interest for them. And so they were really fascinated in getting the bids on the how to get the wooden tree cut out and make it, you know, look like a tree in Webster Groves, and then how to research and figure out the information for the monument marker for Douglas School. So I think it really comes down to, if it's not something you're interested in, I don't think you're going to get anywhere. Nothing's going to get done. So I think it's going to be a focus of, is it something that you are all standing behind? And with so many new members, I would recommend that the next time we have some available time, we decide what is your next thing to tackle. I know a lot of you had been working on that at-risk property list, and then we lost a lot of members and gained a number of new members. Maybe that's not the focus right now. Maybe there is something else. Maybe it's a historic district. Maybe it's you know, we had some conversations about Sears Kit Homes. We had some conversations about Lestron. We had some conversations about how much do we think we could get together for a Tuxedo Park historic district. I think that's what it's going to be really important, because it really comes down to, what are you interested in? I don't have a lot of staff time to be a staff, I'm not going to be doing a bunch of stuff. It's going to really come down to, what are you interested in?
I think for me, because I was here when I know we kind of talked about past members wanting to designate Tuxedo Park area as a historic district. And I know that it seems like for a task like that, there was a lot of controversy surrounding that, and it just seemed very overwhelming. So I think that's the other thing. There were some past projects that I guess I'm kind of not wrapping my head around because I don't know how that would even work or happen.
And I think we did do a quick sit down, and Katie, you can remind me if, I mean, I know the last time we were around a table, I pulled out a whole bunch of things because there had been a long list of potential future projects. And we just sort of sat down, and I think it was like the month or two right before everything shut down. It was like January or February, I think, of 2020. We'd gotten our other code amendment approved, and we threw a few things on the table, and everyone was like, well, maybe we work at risk properties, because it just seemed like one of the ones that didn't have to involve outside members of the community yet at a point in time. But maybe we need to sit down and just revisit potential projects.
Mara, do you think we can send out some sort of survey monkey? Like, I don't know, sunshine law, how that works out, but if we could kind of, and I could help gather some of those old projects, or even some that used to be on like our goal sheets, which got a little too extensive.
Unwieldy.
Part of the problem. But I think if we could pull some of those, do a little bit of a survey monkey for people to kind of prioritize, and then maybe even at the end suggest a couple unique ones, and then maybe having some results like that would be a good way to spark discussion the next time.
Yeah, I think it would be great. I wish we could use, well, we might be able to use SurveyMonkey versus, I guess I keep thinking it, when you first said it, I thought of a doodle poll, like adding things on or checking things off. But yes, we might be able to do a really basic SurveyMonkey that identifies or puts them in some sort of order. And we can definitely go back through, like we did a year and a half, 2 years ago. I can pull out a bunch of the items that were on previous agendas with our whole list of other priorities too. And if someone has something new, we can add that to the list too. So I think before we even get to the SurveyMonkey, we probably need to say, here's the ones that were on the previous list. And then also find out, is there something we haven't thought about? Because we have a lot of fresh minds that are here that could give rise to new thoughts.
And I think it also, to that point, I read in the minutes from last time I was absent, but that Karen, I think, was going to discuss with City Council and kind of ask what direction they had in mind too. And it might be helpful to have some guidance from them as well. You know, this is a whole new group of people as well, you know, over the past couple of years. So what are their interests? Where do they see it going? And that might be helpful for us as we hone our priorities.
So do you know when Karen went to report back, I think she was confused about what she was supposed to report back to. So she was more talking about the at-risk properties list with them. So I stopped her a little bit and I was like, no. It's more about priorities. So then the conversation turned to, and I think, Katie, you might remember this, and you weren't the one who actually attended, but before we shut down, we had been having the chairperson of each of the commissions rotating through at the work session with the city council. And they'd been showing up and saying, here's what we're working on this year. Here are our priorities. So they started having the conversation of just simply saying, well, maybe we need the chairperson to come to our city council meeting to tell us what they're working on. So I don't think that they have anything. I think the conversation was whether there was a concern that things that you were working on didn't align with other projects that the city council is working on. And the problem is, I don't think that there really is a disconnect. I think that even though we might be looking at-risk property lists that as one of the things we were working on, they Karen is always involving them every month and reporting back what you're working on. So no one has said that anything that you're working on is not in the direction that you're going. And you're not the same as I think some other commissions where they are guiding you into what you want to do. You have a very specific, which is why I wanted to share what the code says. You have a really, really strong set of, here's all the things you can do. And that is an ordinance versus like plan commission. They might have some things that the council wants them to be amending in terms of a text code amendment or something that they want them to be looking at. That has a different kind of guidance than what you all have in your purview. But it was last left of, maybe the chairperson should attend our meeting and talk about what you're working on.
So it's back on us.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
So I wanted to pass that on. And Karen would probably say the same if she was on. So sorry. There could be, I tried to give everyone a reminder that we'd changed days and because of the other conflict, but.
Okay.
Anything else I can share? Again, I'm happy to, if there's anyone who wants hard copies of any particular information. I hate sending lots of emails out with lots of digital information. One of the things I thought about doing on our city website, there is a place that we can upload various documents. I thought about uploading all the historic district guidelines, the historic district applications, and some other things. Let me see if, hold on, I'm gonna share a different screen. And then I'm going to close down so I can see more of my screen. So on the city's website, just for all of you to know, if you come down to our document center, there's a whole series of different things. And so we do have a folder that's called Historic Preservation. And that's kind of where a lot of our packets go with our agendas, but we do have like all our historic walks are in a folder. So someone can pull up the PDFs. I could create another folder that we could start putting some of the additional documents that normally we would have printed out and made you like a little 3-ring binder that you could work with. But I could create a new folder in here that could potentially put some additional information if that might help.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay. So right now I have sort of like 2 tasks that I'm thinking of. One is putting a lot of historic documentation information that you might need and making decisions and determinations onto this in the document center. The second was giving you a nice long list of all the things that had been on some of our to-do and priorities of past commissions. So maybe we can narrow down at the next meeting some ideas on some things to work on.
Sounds good.
Also at the next meeting, we probably need to talk about a secretary to take minutes. And technically, although we did just vote recently for Katie and Ann for chair and a co-chair, when you read in depth the way our code reads, there's a certain number of times that Katie is supposed to be serving as the chairperson. So at a certain point, we do need to make sure that someone replaces her as chairperson. It's supposed to not be for more than a couple years at a time. And poor Katie has had it for quite a while because she does such a fabulous job. But we'll want to think about that as potentially another agenda item that we need to be worrying about in the near future.
Or we make an amendment and Katie stays for longer.
Oh, I'm happy to share the responsibility.
Okay, so folder of document, past potential projects, And what I will also do, I think for some of them, we actually had some backup, and we printed it all out for everybody a couple years ago, where like I had a whole bunch of cool articles about Sears kit homes, and I had a bunch of articles about Lustron homes, and we had some information someone had started to put together on, well, what if we did Tuxedo Park, you know, those kinds of things. I'll try to also put those in the document center so that I'm not inundating your email with a bunch of huge documents, because that can get really difficult.
For in past groups, how many, I guess it's probably relative to how difficult the task is, but on average, is it like 1 to 2? Okay, so they'll have 2 focus
Much more than
projects. Yeah, I would imagine more than 2, you'd kind of go in a million different directions and not get much accomplished.
So I feel like Katie, in the last, so just so all of you know, I wasn't the staff liaison prior in all my time that I've been here. I've only been the staff liaison the last couple years since our building commissioner retired. He loved being a part of the Historic Preservation Commission and got really active with it. That's why the project list got really long with lots of things to do. But prior to me coming on, I know, you know, there was a nomination of a historic district. Then sort of there was the tree that was going on for a while, the marker was going on, and there were lecture series. Those are probably like, those 4 were all trying to happen over a span of a couple years. Couple of them got kind of waylaid, like everything was looking really good for both the tree and the marker, and then no one finally went through and like talked to the people and said, yes, let's get, you know, here's the money, let's put a deposit down, let's get it started. And finally we kind of got that going. The little mini historic district took a while, but it was only like 6 or 7 properties, so it wasn't as huge of a deal. But you know, each of them takes a lot of extra work, and especially extra work that is both on the commission side plus some staff time. So even though you guys might be really having lots of free time to do 2 or 3, you know, 3 or 4 projects, I don't have the time to help manage 3 or 4 projects in addition to everything else we've got going on.
Mara, I will add that the code was a huge initiative, the code.
Oh, I forgot. Yes, the code amendment.
And that really kind of, you know, was always in the background, but thanks to your perseverance really got done. So that was probably, in my opinion, the hugest thing that I saw get done in the last like 5 years that I think, you know, will really kind of catapult us into actually being able to make an impact.
That one was really, I feel like that one did, you know, we'd had so many concerns about the older homes and no notification, and that there wasn't really a step or a process to look at them if they had some significance. Now, we really haven't had very many that have come forward since then that we would have probably wanted to try to save, but at least we're seeing what's coming through. And I would agree. I think that one's been a huge step.
Mara, with any of these projects, I don't know in the past, but has there ever been subcommittees formed to tackle some of these? Like, has that been done in the past? Because I guess to me think in order to get some of these projects done, you're right, we're going to need more time. And if that is something that we need to consider in order to accomplish something, like if that's something we need to talk about.
So definitely subcommittees can be formed. And in addition, you can appoint, which is in the code, you can appoint people to act as you can appoint other members that are people that are not on the commission. So for example, the lecture series, there were a few people who were no longer on HPC and they got moved over and were identified to be added to the committee that helped figure out, plan, organize, and do everything for the lecture series. The only thing that I would just recommend or suggest is that with the lecture series was done partly with a grant. And there wasn't always that understanding of everything that needed to be done paperwork wise to make sure that the grant was met. So we did a lot of catch up after the fact as staff, trying to justify why we should still get the money. And we needed it because everything was planned assuming that we had the grant money. And when it comes to things like that, just making sure we have the right people in place. But yes, you can form subcommittees for specific projects, and then those subcommittees can also have people who are not currently serving on the commission.
Anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I would simply comment that being one of the newest members, this is only my second meeting. I don't want to be a bump on a log sitting in a meeting, but I know so little that I don't have much to contribute. I like the idea of subcommittees where we could really dig in and acquaint ourselves with things more clearly, more in depth.
I think it's a good way to utilize people's strengths and unique knowledge bases too. Like another one we had in relation to the districts was a couple people who were really well versed in the archives and had the initiative to go to the library and do a lot of the research on the microfiche and everything that was required to pull a lot of that together. So it's helpful too if we come up with some goals and initiatives and then can kind of, direct people based on what they really enjoy doing and leading subcommittees, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would add to that the walks that have been so popular that Mara mentioned. I mean, we could take that back up again now that we've got the demolitions in control with our strong ordinances. Maybe we could have those, just a new, enthusiasm for those. Maybe, the Lustrum homes, or maybe not, a walk, but a drive around. I mean, we had talked about that with our former commission, but now we've got and Ann, 6 new people on our commission that might really have a desire to take some of that on. There seemed to be some energy there for a while on that. Lustrum homes, Sears Kit homes, maybe Tuxedo Park, maybe architectural styles of homes being featured. Just a lot of different things we can do with the historic preservation aspect of our property.
Didn't we have someone? What was the meeting? It was a couple months ago about the person that was archiving with the walk, and they were like they were gonna like do audio over all of it and make it add it to our app. What happened with that?
So, well, we weren't going to add it to the app. We were going to have to add it to the app after we finished, but he's been working on it. He's given me an update.
Oh, okay.
And he's actually, I think, moving to Webster. He knew he was going to be moving to Webster soon, but I think he's moving maybe next month. And he was super excited about the progress he had made.
Cool.
If nobody has anything else to add, we can conclude our meeting today. Anybody have anything else they want to talk about? No? All right, I'll take a motion to conclude.
I'll make the motion.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I realize we've concluded. I will say one thing about everybody here is we're all very polite, right? We all want to defer, give everybody a chance to say something. So I appreciate that. Although I've never met any of you, I don't think in person. having
Maybe
having interacted with you all virtually, I appreciate it.
Hopefully we'll be in person soon. I think it'll have a different feel when we're able to do that.
Definitely.
What's the plan for that, for in
So-
person?
The plan is that we're supposed to be, so like city council did a quick test run. We are having our first full city council meeting in person tomorrow night. Now I say that's just council and staff in person. We did do our budget work session with council and staff in person. But our technology isn't great for being able to then make it a public meeting that people can Zoom. So they have one camera that's on a tripod in the council chambers, and you could see the room. So you can't see individual faces like you can like this. So we're going to test it. We're going to see how it goes. You know, technically the way that everything has been stated is anyone who's coming into City Hall that is vaccinated technically doesn't need to wear masks anymore. So we have the ability to meet in person. We have small enough groups we could do it. I just think we were a little bit wary because there might still be people out there who are not comfortable coming. And this is the only means to keep it public. And I don't have a good way of Zooming and meeting in person. I don't have a good way to do both. So we're working on that, but I would think maybe a month or two more, and then hopefully we should be able to get back into person.
That's good. And I was going to suggest if anybody wanted to get together for a happy hour to all get to know each other until Neil told us all the things we can't do. So I don't know if that's possible now.
You can actually notify, you can put it on an agenda and we can put it on the city website that you're all meeting and discussing on a patio somewhere.
Invite all of Webster Groves to attend.
Not a bad idea.
Sure. No problems.
Well, we'll see if we can't get together in the next couple months. Maybe we'll put it together. All right. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you June 8th.
Thanks all. Have a good week.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Great
night.
meeting.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.